Good afternoon and welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC. Give me a second while I welcome our Spanish-speaking neighbors. Buenas tardes, gracias por estar con nosotros hoy día en 3 p.m. con SOC. Si quieren acceso al programa en español, por favor marquen el número que aparece en pantalla, que es 646-749-3122. Cuando le contestan su llamada, por favor compartan el contraseña, que es 779-328-221. Thank you for being with us this Monday, July 27th, almost the end of July, folks. We have a very meaningful program for you all of this week. We're tackling the issue of racial justice. My name is Tammy Rivera. I'm the Executive Director and Lead Organizer for Southside Organizing Center, SOC, or SOC for you old schoolers. Folks, if you want to see copies of any of the forums we have completed, we're now in 80 some episodes. You can get those in English or dubbed in Spanish with our Spanish interpretation on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. So you don't have to worry about missing stuff live here. You can come back to the videos, or if you want to share them with family and friends, they're there for you. Please know that we continue to be here for you. Even though the city of Milwaukee has opened to phase 4, we are being more cautious because our offices, our staff, and a huge part of our district is in the 53215 zip code, and that zip code is still experiencing a spike in positive cases. So we are still not able to serve you in person, but you can connect with us, and we continue to be available at our phone, 414-672-8090, on our email, soc@socmilwaukee.org, and you can check out our website at socmilwaukee.org. And we continue to update that page that we have dedicated to information, resources, and ways you can take action in response to the coronavirus. So please continue to revisit it. Every time we have a guest and they provide other resources, our website gets updated. It's a lot of information, and we want to be helpful to you in managing that and making resources more accessible to you. Please, if in any way you appreciate what you hear on the program, the powerful guests we have, the resources, the way you can help us out is by filling out our survey. There's only 3 or 4 questions on there. It takes 3 or 4 minutes. And this is the way you can tell us what information has been useful for you, what do you think we should continue to do, and what do you think we could change or add to better meet your needs. You will see our staff on the forum, and we're not wearing masks. The reason that is because we're all working from home. And so please know that we are taking the pandemic seriously, and we have all pledged, and you have seen our photos with masks, that when we're out in public, we're going to abide and lift up all of those CDC guidelines and our local guidelines. It's just the reason you don't see us is I'm here in my fireplace room at home, most of the times all by myself, so there's no need to wear a mask. I'm going to share a disclaimer before we go into our critical segments section. The views and opinions shared today don't necessarily reflect those of SOC. As I've said many a times, we're a certain type of nonprofit organization. We can swim in some waters, and in other waters we can't. But what we do want to do is ensure the voices of our Southside residents and those leaders that are representing us, whether elected, administrative office, or in the community. All right, we're going to tackle racial justice this week. Let me tell you what's taking place. You don't want to miss this week. I'll be introducing our guest in a little bit, Dr. Tony Baez, who's been such a faithful partner during these times. And he took the extra time to really help me sort out this week. The topic of racial justice, you all, is massive. And in no way is SOC or I thinking we're going to cover it in 5 days, half an hour slot. It's not going to happen. What we do want to do is not assume you know or don't know certain things or have been exposed to those thoughts. So Dr. Bias will be on in a little bit when I introduce him to sort of do an introduction to racism, talk about the historical context, especially of conquering and colonizing, which is what many of our nations experience. Those of us who are Latino X, the indigenous folks here, the first peoples here. And then tomorrow, we're going to have Reggie Jackson from America's Black Holocaust Museum on, and David Muhammad on to talk about internalized racism, anti-Black sentiments, etc. Wednesday, we're going to have an all Spanish program. God willing, Dr. Bias will be able to be back with us. Thursday, we're still waiting to confirm our guest. Originally, our beloved Jesus Salas was going to be on, but it's a heavy week for him. There's so many things happening. And then on Friday, Dr. Rob Smith, the chair of the County Human Rights Commission and professor and director of the Center for Urban Research, Outreach, and Teaching, is going to be here to talk about what could a model at the other end of all of this work on racial justice look like, based on some research he's doing, which I'm finding fascinating, from the process of reconciliation that took place in South Africa. He's interviewing people who experienced that process. So we're wanting to hear that. That's what this week looks like. Next week, we're either going to extend this topic because we haven't even tackled some of the other communities on the South Side, as we have a very diverse population. So we're still trying to figure out, should we extend this week to next week and just talk about certain subgroups of our community members, or should we jump right into what we talked about last week? How are we going to achieve law enforcement reform in the community? So we'll keep you updated. Some quick updates. As you all know, from last week's announcement, the Fire and Police Commission completed its review of Chief Morales. They gave him 11 directives. Some of those directives are due this week, and so you'll want to pay attention to the Fire and Police Commission on that. We were contacted to give input into a draft that the Milwaukee Police Department put out on community-oriented policing, but it was a 2-day turnaround, and so we have asked to do a work session in collaboration, in conjunction with the police department, because in no way am I going to have the time to be to give it the due respect it needs to respond. And also, we are and have been advocating for a co-creation of community-oriented policing. Everybody together, defining what that means from their arenas, the police department, the community, etc., and then developing a philosophy and a program of community-oriented policing that we co-create and then everybody can support. And so that's a sort of different process than the process that they're using. They've also asked for the CCC response to the draft they put out. It was just like a 1.5 pager of some language on that. However, as I've shared last week as well, we're having our first CCC meeting, the Community Collaborative Committee meeting, this Wednesday for the first time in 2020. So we would not have been able to get in a response. I think they sent that out Wednesday and needed it Friday when we didn't even have a meeting yet. So, and at that first meeting, everybody's getting oriented. We're learning Robert's Rules of Order. We're introducing our new members, and we have to elect officers. So there's no time in that meeting. Anyway, I will keep you abreast of what's happening with that community-oriented policing policy. And as I said, we have our first meeting of 2020 Wednesday. There's a committee meeting, I believe, the Policy and Standards Committee meeting Wednesday evening as well. And then the Fire and Police Commission have that July 30th meeting. And you'll want to tune into that because the Policy and Standards Committee, if you remember, I was sharing with you, has agreed to partner with us, the CCC, in developing that community-oriented policing, and is asking MPD to be at the table and some other folks. And so they were going to come up with a recommendation to the full Fire and Police Commission, because remember, that's a committee of the Fire and Police Commission. And so we should hear some action there. And then, of course, as I just mentioned, that's one of the first deadline dates for Chief Morales' directives. Okay, folks, you'll hear more about some other updates when Gabe is with us and Marlene, but we need to get into this topic. So I'd like to welcome back on the program with a lot of gratitude, Dr. Tony Baez. Hola,
Hello.
Dr. Baez. I know I'm getting a little greedy with your time, but I so appreciate you always wanting to make the time for us. I'm good, a little tired like we all are. What can we do? We got to keep plugging at it. We have a heavy topic this week, and I was telling the guests, there's in no way we're going to be able to cover it all. So let's just start the discussion with folks now. And so if you could share with us, Dr. Baez, just an introduction to racism, racial justice, not to assume that people know or don't know.
Well, yes, and I thank you for that, and thank you for the introduction. The issue of racism, as you well stated, is extensive. It's a lot of dimensions to it, but I think that there's some basics that we need to understand about what racism is. Racism is really an act of people sort of like discriminating, prejudice against other people. And typically throughout history, we have seen groups, going after each other for various reasons, okay? But racism sort of like is sort of like that idea that there are groups that are less than others, and that because they are less than others, I can treat you the whatever way I want, okay? It's different from slavery, okay? I mean, slavery has existed throughout times. The Greeks and other groups subsequent to that had slaves. They took the prisoners from other groups and they converted them into slaves to provide for their particular needs in their particular society. And that was rather unfair. But it was usually people that they captured and brought into that. And mostly were people who were like them, white, and they were ethnically of their particular group. But the issue of racism, as we understand it today in our world, is about the fact that after the conquest, after Christopher Columbus came to the Americas, okay? And right after that, when they started to eliminate the indigenous communities of the world, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, and others that came from Europe, there was an attitude. And that attitude that evolved, that racist attitude, and I call it racist in the sense that it was based on the idea of prejudice, of looking down at the inferiority of other people, okay? They conquered the indigenous populations of America, and then when they started to run out of indigenous people, they started to go to Africa and bring people from Africa into the New World. So the people that came from Africa were stolen from their old continent and brought to America. And sometimes they were bought from other tribes in Africa, okay? And they were brought here. And when they were brought to America, they came to the Caribbean first. They came to the Americas, what we know today as Latin America second. And then it came to America, okay? And when it came to America, they were looking for justification to make sure that they would explain why they were enslaving certain people. And that explanation took on the form of what we know today as racism. The prejudice against the people because of the color of their skin, because of the language they speak, because of the religion they practice, but mostly it was against people of color. So I would say that if we understand that that was something that happened historically, what follows were all means by which the conquering people, particularly the Europeans, try to apply justification to what they did, okay? Whether it be slavery, whether it be Jim Crow laws, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, whether it be things that happen against Latinos, because we have to be concerned in this program, particularly, to make sure that Latinos understand how racism affects us. That is not just a Black issue. Racism is an issue that affects all of us. And the colonial experience in the Americas has a lot to do with how we have sort of like become colonial communities all around America. And we got to get away from the notion that when we look at Latinos, we are looking at a very diverse group of different kinds of people. And that is mostly because of nationalities and why we became nations and et cetera, and it would take me all day to go into that, academically speaking. But in this country, because we have so many groups that happen to fall under that umbrella of Latinos or Hispanics, as some people use, not all of us experience racism in the same way. We experience colonialism, we experience exploitation, economic exploitation, but the people that came from the Caribbean particularly had a slavery experience that was not in any way different from the experience that we had with Africans in this country. And I will go into that later too. But that generally gives you a sense of what racism is about.
And that's important to cover over and over, because we get disconnected from that point of its origins.
Yeah.
And we get deceived because there are small victories or seemingly victories, right? When President Obama got elected, a whole group of America wanted to say, now that's evidence that those days are behind us, but they're not. And so it's important to talk about that historical root of where racism came in. So Dr. Baez, talk to us about what does structural, systematic, how does that manifest itself in the U.S. government, like the census? Share a bit about that.
Sure. Look, I have to then go back a little bit into history, though,
Sure.
because the origins of racism in this country are connected to that idea of looking at the inferiority of races and applying the idea that Blacks are less, etc., Latinos are less. What happens throughout time is that there are efforts of trying to redefine some of that, because people fought back. African slaves fought back. Latinos fought back. There is a plethora of struggles in the new America that was pretending to be democratic, but democratic only for some, not for others. Okay, so that conflict, where a nation is proposing that it's going to create a new world order, that we are no longer going to be under a king, and that now we're going to have a democracy. So you have the founding fathers, and you have all of that. All of that effort of trying to establish itself as a democratic country that by comparison to other empires and other countries around the world is different, okay? We have found that it's not that different. We have found that for people of color and people who were viewed from a racist optic, okay, they establish structures, they establish categories. This was done through laws. This was done at times through legislation, okay? This was done by making sort of like changes in the way America operated, okay? But that form of operation created more categories and more categories. So let me quickly go back. So if you have Brown versus Topeka or Brown versus Board of Education, this is a 1954 Supreme Court decision. And in that decision, the court basically says in education, you cannot continue to have separate, arguing that separate institutions for Blacks and for Mexicans and for other people are equal to those of whites, okay? That is a use of law to try to create categories. And you had African Americans fighting against that and winning before the Supreme Court. And to that separation of the races. But in the same vein that African Americans were doing that, and this is why this is important for us as Latinos, in 1954, in the same year, when the Supreme Court acts on Brown versus Board of Education, there's another decision called Peter Hernandez versus State of Texas. And Peter Hernandez, in that particular Supreme Court decision, we find that the court said, wait a minute, discrimination in this country is not just against blacks, it's also against people of color in general, okay? So you see the categories there? It's people of color are being affected. And we determined in this Supreme Court decision that Latinos, and they use the word Latinos, which is very interesting. This is 1954. 1954, the Supreme Court is saying Latinos, okay, to bring everybody together, are a suspect class, meaning that they were individuals that were subject to discrimination, okay? And that in that particular decision, the court determines a week before Brown versus Board of Education, a week before Brown, okay, that Latinos are a distinct ethnic racial group, that because of where they come from, their nationalities, their language, their culture, their religion are being discriminated against. So categories were set through litigation. Then you have legislation that follows right after that. And you have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 65, okay? But even when you have government creating legislation to do that, governments are politically motivated. They are affected in this democracy by who gets elected. And they really were trying to appease the people from the South, because there had been a civil war in 1864 that was fought because the northern states argued that the southern states, because they practiced something called slavery and the oppression of blacks, were enriching themselves, and we had to end slavery unless it became something for everybody. But many northern states didn't want to touch it, okay? They were at least progressive enough to know that they shouldn't touch it. So they end up in a war. So it's a civil war in a democracy, okay? The South fighting the North, and basically slavery is part of the issue. It's not just the economics of the matter, but if you sustain slavery, then you are going to have a category of people that will be exploited, that will render more economic benefits to the South, and the South will do much better than the North, okay? So that's another category, okay? But those people that lost the war, you know, that actually were folks that fought like crazy, and it was a bloody war, a bloody civil war, stay with it. So by 1964, okay, that's almost 100 years later, okay, the government of the United States has to pass a Civil Rights Act to correct the harm that had been done to African Americans and Mexicanos, okay? This is important. It's not just Mexican Americans, but Mexicans too, okay? So that there wouldn't be racial discrimination against them. We had to eliminate racism. We had to eliminate the vestiges of separation of the races. And a civil rights law is passed. But that civil rights law, when it went into effect, the South continued to fight it. And they're fighting it to today. To this very moment, they continue to fight it. So what I'm trying to say here is that history has a way of sort of like making us think about things in a long term. This didn't happen overnight. The thing that people look at today is you got a bunch of young people out there marching and fighting and protesting and all of this, but it is anchored in what happened historically. They have to fight today to correct the wrongs that have remained throughout history in a government that pretends to be democratic, okay? That government that pretends to be democratic continues to have laws that, you know, suppress the vote of people of color, okay? That government that, you know, pretends to be democratic continues to go to Latin America in terms of its colonial control as an empire and get rid of governments that they don't like, okay? when it affects the economic interests of the United States. Okay, continues to suppress the people of Puerto Rico, which are a colony of the United States, taken over in 1898, but we're still there. Okay, the Americans are still in Puerto Rico. Okay, so these categories have been created because of historical phenomena. People cannot undermine that, and that's why it's important for people to read, to study, to understand things. We continue to battle today against the remnants of what happened throughout history. We have not reached a democracy that we are comfortable with in a country where the minority people and the people of color are becoming larger and larger. So Latinos are 60 million today. They cannot mess with us anymore. Okay, they cannot suppress our vote in some parts of the country because we're going to fight back. Okay, they cannot talk to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez like they did in the Congress the other day because she fights back and she uses, for the first time in the history of this country, a congressional forum to make her case. But, people shouldn't forget the fact that in 1954, too, a group of Puerto Ricans went before Congress indicating the very same day that Congress was discussing the issue of indigenous reservations in this country and the issue of languages in this country, the group of Puerto Rican folks, 5 of them, went before Congress and shut up the Congress of the United States in protest. So they went further than what AOC went the other day. Okay, they went further. They made a huge statement. No other country in the world had attacked the United States Congress in action and wounded a number of congressmen. So I think that what we have today is that we are seeing that all of that history contributes to the way the society becomes better. When AOC gets up there and does that, in Hamilton versus Alabama, 1964, a black woman goes to court in Alabama and she was treated by the judge that kept on saying, calling her the N-word and calling her, names. And the judge, the court is doing that. And this case goes to the Supreme Court. And in Hamilton, the Supreme Court decides, can you imagine? They decide that black women have the right to be called by their names, not as girl, not any other pejorative name. So Hamilton is an incredibly important decision that deals with the fact that the racist mentality of the country at that historical moment, including courts of law, that are supposed to improve our laws, including governments, was still acting in very racist ways, because they still look down at a people. They still look down at black women, They still look down at blacks in general, in spite of the fact that the Supreme Court in 1954 said, stop it, don't do it again. They didn't care. They still don't care. Vote suppression in this country is driven by racism, That's what it happens. It's not just about trying to suppress the vote of white people, etc. No, it's people of color, So we have to keep that in mind as we proceed. Categories are the direct descendants, if you may, of racism in this country.
Dr. Baez, before we move on to the next topic, how about, can you touch on how the census has used categories as a political power move in terms of categorizing all sort of Europeans in white, and then, categorizing Hispanics at the time as white race? Can you just address that issue a little bit, since we're in a census here, and it'll help people maybe navigate how they respond to the census this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, again, the census is really a tool used by the government of this country to count people. The Constitution is very informative in that regard. You have to count. You have to count the people of this country. But if the people who continue to increase in this country happen to be of a particular color, you have to find ways to try to find them. how do we define them so that people count themselves? If they are counted as white, then you sort of like dismiss this notion of the Latinos, et cetera, but what has happened throughout history with the census is that it wavers, it goes back and forth. Okay, today we have categories that are a little bit better than what we had before, but not perfect. Okay, and we know that. Okay, however, we need to be counted, because if we're not counted, then we will not be the beneficiaries of that distribution of resources in this country that is so necessary in our states. Okay, because the sort of like distribution of this of resources is connected to how the economics of the state operates. Okay, so it's important that we show the census. We still have a lot of work to do to redefine the categories within the census. Okay, because the categories within the census do not necessarily represent well what we are all about as a people. It particularly is sinful as it addresses the issue of Latinos, okay, and the different Latino categories, okay. So if we get stuck on that, with the battles that are going on right now, the legislative battles, the court battles, the effort by the current administration to not count the undocumented, okay, when we continue to see a huge amount of people who happen to be undocumented in this country, and the attitude that this administration has towards people who are undocumented is those inferior people of color that should not be counted, that should not be part of this. Okay, we should only count citizens. It benefits politically one party over another. Okay, so my suggestion is we have to do the census. We have to continue the fight to refine it. Okay, when people today talk about refining the census and making those categories more clear, you would be remiss if you do not know, as a Latino and others, that this battle has been going on for decades. Decades, okay? This is not new. Mexican Americans were fighting about it anyway for a long, long time. Puerto Ricans, when they came to this country, continued to fight about it, okay? And people, African Americans, continue to fight on it. So let's refine it as we go along. But racism continues to be at the very sort of anchor of how issues like the census evolve over time. So if we elect people that are more supportive and understanding of what we're talking about, the likelihood will be that we will be able to refine those tools that the government uses, like the census, okay, like voters participation, et cetera, et cetera. But if we continue to leave in power and elect into power people who have this racist optic, these people with an racist optic are going to sort of like put things into those tools, okay, whether it be the census or voters, participation, etc., that sort of like cut into the number of people of color that will be able to participate into society, because the assumption is that people of color tend to vote with those elements in the society that are more progressive about that than elements that are not.
Dr. Baez, the time has flown. We've given some folks touchstones to the past that are still affecting us today. And that was the objective today, to help people understand where those roots of racism, how far back they go, how deep they are, and that they continue today. We thank you for your time, and we're hoping we'll see you maybe back Wednesday for this version in Spanish. I know we have a little penciled in, but we'll try to confirm so that we can share with our Spanish-speaking folks. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Baez.
Absolutely, and thanks to you. Okay, bye.
Be safe. All right, folks, I'm going to say some hellos. I saw that you didn't have any questions and the time went fast. But if you do, we invite you to put them up there, and we'll make sure that Dr. Baez can answer them for our Wednesday program. Hola, Maria. Hola, Diana. Veo que they answered your question. I see that they answered your question. You're welcome, Diana. That's what we're here for, to serve you all. Hola, Mari. Hola, Enid, Uriel. See, it's always good to hear from Dr. Baez. All right, folks, you got your introduction. Racism has been a long time. Hi, Charlie. Has been a long time element of the creation of what is well, around the world and for all times, right? But in our nation in particular, you get to sense the sense of some of those elements and how they were brought here. And so tomorrow, we'll continue this discussion with that is the history of racism, Dr. Baez. Hola, Maria. What is structural and systemic racism, which is what Dr. Baez said, those things that are made into categories, laws, administrative practices, etc. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about internalized racism, how all of that manifests itself in the way we feel about ourselves and our cultures and our families. What I'd like to do now is invite Marlene on, who's going to give us an update on the very important topic of COVID-19. Hola, Marlene.
Hola. All right.
Go ahead and give us an update.
Yep. So for today, I'd like to challenge everyone to wear their masks. And so that brings me to our mask up challenge that we've been having. So wear your mask and take a selfie wearing your mask and post it on your social media platforms. So that could be your Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you like, and tag 3 of your closest friends, relatives, anyone you know, so then they can also wear their mask and put up a selfie. So we're trying to create a movement to create safety for our community, not only for yourselves, but also for your family members and friends. So that being said, I'm going to go over some information and resources that you should probably know of right now. So first of all, I'm going to talk about where you can get masks right now. So you can go and get masks at the FISERV Forum, which the address is located right there at 1111 Bell R. Phillips Avenue. The Milwaukee Health Department is also giving away free masks at the following locations. So the Health Department Administrative Office at 841 North Broadway, Keenan Health Center at 3200 North 36th Street, Northwest Health Center at 7630 West Mill Road, and the Southside Health Center at 1639 South 23rd Street. We will be sharing this on our Facebook page, and you guys can take it and share it with your family members and friends that need masks right away. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is where you can go to get tested. So it's not just the UMO Center and the Barack Obama School at Custer Stadium site that you can get tested at. Those are 2 very important sites that you can get tested at right now. The UMO site is located at 2701 South Chase Avenue, and the Barack Obama School Custer Stadium site is located at 4300 West Fairmount Avenue. But in Wisconsin, you can schedule an appointment at certain Advocate Aurora locations after you do an online screening. You can visit www.aah.org/testing, or you can call 877-819-5034, and they can help you out. Of course, they will probably ask you if you have insurance requirements, but if you do have Medicare and Medicaid, you are covered for this, and you can schedule to go in to one of their clinics and get tested for COVID-19. Another location you can go on if the UMO Center and Custer Stadium site are really backed up with people, you can go to the Shalem Healing Center, and they're hosting free drive-up and walk-up testing. So that's held every Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. through the end of July. And then the Bader Philanthropies parking lot also is having testing, and they're located at 3300 North Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. No appointment is needed for that. You can also just call 211 and they will tell you your closest testing location from your home. And then they'll also put you on the line to speak with a nurse to go over any symptoms that you have or anything that you're having concern about regarding COVID-19. So that's all I have for you guys for today. I'd like to give it back to Tammy, but stay safe, and I will be sharing those 2 documents on our Facebook page so you can utilize that information to the best of your ability. Thank you.
Marlene, the site at the UMOS and the other site, are they at the Barack Obama School? Those are free testing?
Yes. Yeah, those
And-
are free testing.
And anybody can go there if they have symptoms or not.
Yes.
And so the Aurora testing, there's a cost to that, or is that free as well?
So it's, there's a cost to it, but they do cover Medicaid and Medicare. So if you have those 2 things, you'll be fine. Also, I haven't added 16th Street Clinic as well. 16th Street Clinic is a great resource where you can get free testing right now. And then the Shalom Center and the Philanthropy Center are also free. So you're free to go walk up to them and get testing with no appointment necessary.
And is Walgreens and CVS still doing testing, or is that done? Do you know?
So, yeah, they are still doing testing, but it is by appointment. And it is free, I believe.
We'll confirm that tomorrow about the cost of them. But again, that's on our website, correct? Where you can go to get tested if people are missing it here.
Yeah.
All right. Do you know if the Aurora is a walk-in or do they do drive-through as well?
I know it's by appointment.
So I assume it's a walk-in. We'll confirm that for tomorrow too. Thank you, Marlene, as always. Very important, up-to-date information for us. All right, folks. Do you have any questions for us today? You have anything you want to know about the rest of the week in terms of our racial justice focus? Is there someone you want us to bring on the program in the next week or two, or a question that you have about racial justice or racism? If you do, please put it in the comments section. I'd love to collect that from you and make sure that our upcoming guests can answer it, or if I can shed any light. All right, we're gonna go ahead and bring on our civic engagement manager, who's also our production person behind the scenes this week, Gabe Charles.
Hey, Tammy.
Hola, Gabe. Thanks for being here. Thanks for producing the program this week. And yeah, go ahead and give us an update. What's going on?
So I do want to remind everyone that tomorrow starts early voting. So I'm going to share the image of the early voting sites. So we have, it's called in-person absentee voting or early voting, and the express locations that will accept multiple people at once are the Zeidler Municipal Building, and on the south side, the Manitoba School. And then there's also at the Midtown Center some early voting as well. And this is going to go from tomorrow, Tuesday, July 28th, through Sunday, August 9th. And the times for that is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And again, that's going to be tomorrow until August 9th, a couple days before the August 11th election. And then there are some other locations as well that aren't every day, but they do have some options, and they're more limited in that they only allow one voter at a time due to limited spacing. So trying to keep everyone safe. So it might have a short line if you go into early vote. But these locations on the south side are the Bayview Library, Mitchell Street Library, Tippecanoe Library, and Zablocki Library. And as you can see on this flyer, it is Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays only from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So just keep in mind that it's only Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for these limited voting locations. And then, as usual on Mondays, I just want to let you all know what's going on this week in terms of Common Council meetings and committee meetings. And there was actually a special Public Safety and Health Committee meeting this morning to discuss the expected arrival of federal agents to the city of Milwaukee. So for those of you who have been seeing the uprising that's happening in places like Portland, this is concerning because they have had reports of people who are of federal agents who are just taking people and in unmarked cars and not giving explanations or having formal arrests. So this is obviously a really important topic to be discussed. And U.S. Attorney for our district, Matthew Kruger, said that the federal agents coming to Milwaukee will only be focusing on violent crime, illegal gun cases, and the increasing homicide rate in Milwaukee. And they are not coming to address the unrest or the uprising as they have in Portland. And Kruger is expected to provide additional information on this plan that they have this coming week. So we will be keeping you all informed about that. But I guess it is many Common Council members, and myself included, have voiced hesitance or doubt in that whether or not this will actually be the real reason why they're coming, or if it can be adjusted in the moment and then those federal agents can then start addressing protesters. So there's a lot that's still in the air that is to be discussed and will likely be discussed at the upcoming Common Council meeting this week, and most likely the FPC meetings that are happening this week as well. And then at the meeting this morning, Milwaukee District Attorney John Chisholm said that they would prosecute federal agents who violate the law. And he shared this statement. He said, kidnapping, false imprisonment, unlawful assault, those are simply crimes. Those are crimes no matter who commits them, whether it's a federal agent or a citizen. You cannot do that, not in the States, and it won't be tolerated here. So nice to hear a statement like that from our district attorney, and we will be keeping you all posted on anything else that comes out about this. MPD did say that they were shocked that Milwaukee would be a site to receive federal agents. So we will also be listening to what they might say at the upcoming FPC meetings. So I'm going to share an image too about what the FPC or what the different meetings are coming up this week. Starting from the bottom, so the most recent meetings are at the bottom. So the Public Safety and Health Committee meeting was this morning at 9. Then we have 3 meetings tomorrow morning. The Licenses Committee is going to meet at 8:15. Finance and Personnel Committee is meeting at 8:30. And the Judiciary and Legislation Committee is going to be meeting at 8:45. And these are special meetings. They're likely going to be shorter. So that's maybe why they're staggered like that. But keep those in mind. And then Tuesday, tomorrow. Yeah, Tuesday's tomorrow. Is the Common Council meeting, and there's going to be a lot discussed at this Common Council meeting, as most Common Council's meetings recently have had much to discuss, and especially they're up for vote is going to be a number of resolutions that were passed at the committee level last week regarding some urging for the FPC to implement different practices. So definitely want to tune into that on Tuesday. Also tomorrow, the FPC Complaints and Discipline Committee will be meeting at 4:30 p.m. And then Wednesday, we have our Community Collaborative Commission meeting for the first time that we're all excited to see and tune into. So definitely access that through the website as usual. The Millennial Task Force is going to meet also on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Oh, and the CCC committee meeting is at 10 a.m. if you can't see that. Then we have a zoning code technical committee meeting at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. Charter School Review Committee on Thursday at 5 p.m. And then the FPC Policies and Standards Committee meeting also Thursday at 5:30 p.m. So lots to look forward to this week. Definitely tune into what you can, but know that we will report out anything that we think is really vital for all of you to know. And I want to leave you all with a census video. I loved what Dr. Baez was saying about the census and how it has improved a little bit in how we categorize folks, but there's definitely so much more that can be done, and love that he uplifted the importance of filling it out to make sure that folks know that we are here, that even regardless of having papers or not, you matter to be counted, and to just really uplift that census to your friends and family. So I'll leave you all with a video, and we'll be back with you later this week.
There will be parties again soon, and family gatherings. There will be parades, and sporting events, and concerts. To help our communities when they come back together, respond to the 2020 census now. Spend a few minutes online today to impact the next 10 years of healthcare, infrastructure, and education. Go to 2020census.gov and respond today to make America's tomorrow brighter. It's time to shape our future.
Thank you, Gabe, for that update. I want to make two things or add two things to Gabe's update. One is, in case you didn't catch, the Collaborative Community Committee is now the Collaborative Community Commission. And so we were a temporary group that has now been renewed into a permanent group, which becomes a commission. Just in case you're searching and putting in committee, it's now a commission. And then the other thing that I want to add to Gabe's report is regarding the federal agents, that according to WTMJ, Police Chief Morales has said that he has respectfully declines the assistance of the federal agents as well. So we have a consensus locally that they are not wanted at this moment in time in our community. It's causing fear and concern and unnecessary burden. And so just adding that to that work. All right, let me check if you have any questions here before we roll on to the next part of our program. We don't, so I'm gonna ask for Marisol a reminder about our survey to come up, and hopefully you all will be inspired to just take a couple of minutes, press the link that's in the comment and fill out the survey.
Has this live forum been informative and useful to you? What part of the forum could be improved or changed to make it better? Please take a quick survey that's located in the comments section so that we can keep 3 o'clock with SOC going for residents. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, folks, let me remind you what is coming up in the next couple of days in case you weren't here at the top of the hour, and to encourage you to be with us tomorrow. Reggie Jackson from America's Black Holocaust Museum and David Mohammed is going to be with us to talk about internalized racism and anti-Blackness in our own communities. Wednesday, Dr. Baez will hopefully be back for our all Spanish language day. Remember, those of you who are English speakers only, you'll have the opportunity to access the program as our Spanish speakers do the rest of the week via teleconference. So you'll be able to see everything that's happening and hear it translated simultaneously in English. And then Friday, Dr. Rob Smith, chair of the county Human Rights Commission and the director for Marquette University Urban Center for Research, Teaching, and Outreach, is going to be talking about his work and the possible pathway to reconciliation at the end of all of this hardship we're going through by examining how South Africa successfully achieved that afterwards. So don't miss any of these days. They're going to be important and meaningful, and we're still booking some guests. So please stay with us. All right, folks, we don't want to forget the work that's happening on the front line. We are in solidarity with the protesters and their families. Our thoughts and prayers are with those impacted by C19. And to some degree, everyone is, right? The stresses, the economics, the kids not having school and being at home, etc. But especially with those folks who have had a positive test or have lost a loved one. So we don't want to forget about them as we tackle these other things. All right. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate your presence. We ask that you fill out the survey, and we're going to leave you with our thank you video for those partners that support us with resources, our funders.
Hello, SOC viewers. My name is Kaiser Strock, and I live in the Polonian neighborhood. We would like to thank everyone for supporting our 3 o'clock with SOC live show and for completing our SOC survey. In addition to thanking our residents for tuning in and sharing our show, we would also like to thank the following sponsors: Wisconsin Voices, Community Development Block Grants, Neo Philanthropy State Infrastructure Fund, Movement Voter Project, Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the Zilber Foundation, City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, Tides Foundation, City of Milwaukee Promise Zones, and all the faithful individuals who support our SOC through their personal donations. Thank you.